and hit record. And can everyone see the presentation screen? Just a thumbs up or nod or semaphore, whatever. Great. I'm Chris Daniel. I do faculty PD for EKU Online. With me presenting today is Dr. Stephen Shisley and Brittany Struby, my colleagues, senior instructional designer for EKU Online. And we wanted to kind of break away for a little bit from sort of the concerns and fears of the plagiarism question. Don't worry, I still have information about that in here and a few little updates and developments on that. But really, I wanted to leave a lot of time for you all to give your opinions and relate your experiences. I think that's kind of where the magic is happening with these things and why you've expressed so much interest and enthusiasm. So I want to talk a little about recent events, show some tools and techniques, and offer a little bit of perspective from an instructional design point of view. And yes, I'll try to monitor this chat. Brittany, help. I think you're going to help me out, or Stephen help me out.
I got it. I'll send it.
You all, both of you, Brittany and Stephen, break in at any point, and then I hope to wrap up this pretty quickly and let people discuss as they should want. And actually, I've been sending that to one person and not everybody. There's a link to the presentation for everybody. So recent events, tools and techniques, and then your perspectives. So first of all, I'm not making any scientific claims today. I hope I'm not. If I am, somebody smack me with the virtual foam brick or whatever. We are learning as we go about a lot of this, and I'm just sharing what I'm picking up as somebody who delves into that. We probably have a couple of centuries worth of instructional experience in this virtual room, and I want to respect and honor that and also give a platform for that. So let's talk about some recent events. First of all, I want to differentiate generative versus other types of AI. Artificial intelligence, this notion of advanced computer programming to make complex decisions, that's not new. This generative text and image technology is a bit newer. And we probably have some computer science folks in the room or others with expertise who could really speak to that. And just realize we got our feet in both pools, multiple pools here. We'll talk about top leaders. There are premium and freemium price models emerging. There are a host of popular detection services, although, as Oliver mentioned, and I agree, I'm not sure that any one of them are effective, and it's an arms race, like Matt Winslow said. He used the term arms race, and I think that's very appropriate. Universities are writing policy, and there is also this notion of multiple technologies around AI and generative AI, media creation, and other automations are converging. And so I'll talk just a few minutes about those sorts of things. So cheating is not the main focus today of what I'm talking about, Brittany and Stephen are talking about, but you're welcome to express those concerns and views. How many tools do we have right now? You'll see the link that is described as many by many, a whole bunch. I lost count. I don't think it's effective to count. One list gave me 33 writing AI tools right now that are have a freemium or premium price model. More on that here in a second. You can click that link to peruse oodles and oodles of AI tools. Generative AI apps and services. There's an news article by Heiter this past month. Please check that out. And Brittany made a really good point in a conversation that we had about let's remember our humanity in all this. Brittany, would you like to talk about that?
Sure. So yeah, I think, going into this AI world, it can get very overwhelming very quickly, but it's going to be more important forever for those relationships to be established between faculty and students and between students and students. And so I think if we can kind of, it's very easy for our brains to go to worst case scenario with some of this stuff, when comparing it and contrasting it, hearing a lot of different things, because there's just constantly so much to learn about, but it's also a really cool opportunity too, if we use it as a tool.
Stephen, anything to add? Okay, let's keep rocking. So here's another link to a site that gives a list and a comparison chart of about 33 of the more popular premium, freemium AI writing apps. And I'm not sure if Grammarly is in this list, but that's sort of in the realm of what we're talking about. And they run the gamut of write me a whole essay to assist me at various points. And so you can check that link out as well. It'll take you a while to get through because there are several of them. GPT detection services. This article lists sort of the most popular ones. And in my view, and I think what I'm hearing from faculty, what I'm hearing from the library, love to hear if Cindy Judd is online, somebody give me a perspective on that at some point, that we're still really in fraught territory about being able to say this was AI generated, it was not AI generated. And as the technologies become more robust, we're just going to see an arms race, if you will, or a spy. I think of the old Mad Magazine, spy versus spy. We're going to have one spy, win for a minute, and then the next frame, the other spy will win.
Hey, Chris, I think this is where that humanity comment also comes into play. As you're looking at students writing essays or anything that's a written assignment, this is where you're going to see that need to have a relationship between the faculty and the student a lot more, and especially the opportunities to provide them feedback. There are certain ways that you can detect an AI writing assist. For example, how familiar is the student with the content? Or are there contextual nuance problems inside what has been produced? Or should the student not most likely be familiar with this subject? Or is it sounding like a technical writer, which AI seems to do? So that's where I think you also see the humanities part come into play.
Certainly. And I hate to keep putting words in Matthew Winslow's mouth, but he had this, what I heard, let me just say what I heard is that when we tell students why we're asking them to do something and get them to buy into that, and others have said this too, we're really going to get a lot more traction, I think. And so, remembering our students, remembering that they want to succeed as well. And so we're here to help them. This is another link that I think Nadim Slipjevich gave me. It is a big list from a gentleman named Lance Eaton, who I think is in higher ed, who is sort of cataloging various university policies regarding the use of generative text AI. And I think some faculty have already seen this. It's been passed around in various forms. I think that's well worth your opportunity just to look and see what other institutions are doing. What are they thinking about? So I'd like to try to play this video clip if I can. It is from the GPT, OpenAI, the sort of, not really the progenitor, but the most popular, the company that has the most popular GPT technology, talking about how using that's going to converge with some automated processes and use of other generative AI like images to do a lot of things at once just based on text input. So I'm going to give this a try. If you can't hear it, let me know and we'll stop and you can peruse that at your convenience. So the premise was he wanted to make a vegetarian meal plan. He wanted to get the Instacart menu for that, generate an AI picture, and then tweet that information out to all the TED viewer followers. And so within just a little bit of clicking, he made that happen. So this notion of convergence is going to really come to front and center, I think, in the end of 2023, 2024. Just wanted to show that. And you can watch the whole presentation if you should want to. Well, no, I don't want to run through that again. So now we're going to talk a little bit about implications and some tools and techniques that are sort of emerging. And I need to do this. So from an instructional design perspective, I think one of the more salient concepts is this notion of rapid prototyping, or being able to create instructional content very quickly given some parameters. And so, for example, here's some things that I could do. And I'm going to show what I did not so long ago in a very short amount of time. And I'm going to pick on social work. So social work faculty can tell me I'm really off base, or this was really a kind of a cool exercise. So, for example, perfunctory or surface level content or output. I think ChatGPT has a very good, and remember, we do a lot of rapid prototyping in instructional design. There's a 1990 article I've referenced on why we do that, what are the implications, and where may this fit, where may it not fit. So perfunctory content, having a simulated collaborator. We would love to collaborate in groups a lot or in pairs. Sometimes we don't have the opportunity to do that. having some sort of dialogue process for reflection purposes. As an ID, I like to know if what I'm doing is on target. Sometimes I don't have the ability to talk with my faculty member or my subject matter expert. ChatGPT could help me with that. It could also suggest certain sequences for tasks or content knowledge. Sometimes sequence is very important when we're learning. Most of the time it is, actually. How to augment and enhance the role of subject matter expert or SME or SME. And remember, we still hallucinate. So I'm going to show you what I did as an example for all these things. Can you see my ChatGPT screen on your screen? Okay. So picking on social work, y'all can pick this apart, social work folks, and Callahan or George Ashley, if you're in the room, please tell me how this messed up. So I just said, good morning. Would you write me, because I've never worked with social work except just on sort of an ad hoc basis. Could you write me a short script to introduce students to an introductory social work course? Certainly. And so it gave me a script, and it's a pretty generic script. I'm glad to post that or paste that for you to peruse it, but it's just a generic intro. I don't know what is important in terms of introducing that topic, but this is a script that I could quickly work from. I could send that to faculty member and they could give me some notes. They could give me some pointers. So I thank the disembodied artificial intelligence. Would you write me a 2-column script for this and suggest where I can place images? It said, sure. And so it took the exact same script, gave me the script in column 2, and then gave me suggestions about the types of visuals that I might include. Now that's a pretty quick transition, but there it is. We could, it's something to work from. So I thanked it and I said, okay, could you, in this first week of this course, could you maybe suggest in a numbered list and an adjacent column what activities you think that the students should do, and how long approximately do you think it would take for the students to complete these? And by the way, this is a 3-credit-hour course. Okay, so it gave me the activity and about how many minutes it thought that each activity should take. Wonderful. And then I said, my heritage is from Eastern Kentucky. I come from coal camp workers and farmers. Could you write a few questions where I gently share that heritage and encourage others to share something about themselves? And could you maybe help me relate this to social work concepts for the new student? Remember, I don't know anything about social work, so it could be that these things are way off base, but maybe with a good syllabus and some initial readings, it could help me massage that into something usable or something to use as a discussion for those faculty. So it said, great. Here are some questions. Share a bit about your family background and how it influenced your values. What do you hope to accomplish as a social worker? How does your personal background inform those goals? And then I also asked it, help me think about how to relate that question to social work issues or social justice issues. So I did that. What do you think a subject matter expert would say about this approach to week 1? And so now here's some of the critical thinking and reflection possibly. And what are some criticisms of the approach that we sort of built here? And please use bulleted lists for this question. Okay, it says that, and it gives me a caveat first. It says, all right, I'm an AI language model. I'm going to give you some stuff, but that doesn't mean this is expert. So your mileage may vary. Please check things. So it said my approach was comprehensive. The emphasis on personal reflection can help build a sense of community, which we know that from what I know about instructional systems and the community of inquiry model. Here's some criticisms. It may be too focused on personal reflection. At lower levels of discourse, sometimes we just need to know facts and figures. The time allocation may not be sufficient because social work's pretty complex. A lot of what we study is pretty complex. Some students may be uncomfortable sharing personal information, and the approach may not adequately address the need for critical thinking and analysis. And Ann said, yes, I'm a fan, needs to be cited as non-scholarly reference. There you go. I agree too. So in terms of this is, again, the context is me as an instructional designer who, I'm jack of all trades to some extent. I have a broad base for learning and knowledge, but I'm not an expert. It's a way for me to rapidly get some things so we can start a discussion about how to design a course. Brittany.
Hey, so I just wanted to point out Matthew Howell in the chat had a really great question and just some concerns that he shared. And He asked, this is a fun question, I think. How good and how smart is ChatGPT?
Well, I mean, that's a big old, I think we got to define our terms a little bit, but I would say that as an assistant, as somebody, as an agent, so I'm thinking of this thing as my little agent who doesn't know all that both of us need to know to accomplish goals. And so I want to be really vigilant and fact check and ask questions. And if I'm working with subject matter expert or a faculty member, what do you think about this? But if they give me a syllabus and I can return a week 1 and an outline of week 2 and 3 that kind of follows those syllabi in broad strokes, it can help build a discussion. I think GPT-4 is a lot better than GPT-3. I didn't buy access to that yet. I don't know if I didn't really answer the question. It's pretty good.
No,
but
I think
you got to fact check.
Yeah, I think that answers it. And I think I would also just add to that too, that it's getting smarter with everything that you put in it, right? So there's the mindset of if you're not the product, or if you're not paying for the product, then you are the product. But in this case, we're just making the product smarter the more and more that we're using it. And so he also mentioned that you can tell when it has no idea what it's talking about, the same way that a student using fancy words from the textbook just to sound smarter is. And I think that just goes to Stephen's point earlier that you'll be able to tell, like if you know your subject, you'll be able to tell. And then being able to use ChatGPT as a tool for students is going to be important, but also being able to think through, somebody who actually knows what they're talking about in this situation is going to have an understanding that this isn't, maybe the most well-written thing in the world.
Yeah, for sure.
I would add to that, Chris, that it's interesting if you go to ChatGPT, or Bing just came out with one today that anyone can access, and you ask this AI model, you say, what are your limitations? It actually gives you a pretty good list of its limitations. And you can look at that and say, those are also its weaknesses. And it's interesting to think about how you can interact with those weaknesses and limitations in regard to your student. So for example, it gives you a list. It says, here are my limitations. And this allows students to understand that critical thinking on their part is still important, that even though this machine has a very vast array of knowledge and it seems to be very, very intelligent in terms of what it can produce as far as writing and knowing the content, there's still a critical thinking element that's really important that students get to practice while they use this resource.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. For folks in the instructional design arena, students and practitioners may know the name David Merrill. David Merrill created what he calls first principles of instruction. And I think it's a good way to think about what are the implications of some of these technologies for teaching and learning. His first principles are that they're a set of 5 sort of objectives or concepts that aim to improve the effectiveness of learning experiences. And so I just want to talk about these in really broad strokes and have you all think about, the more we can apply these technologies to these 5 principles, I think the better learning experience students will have. It's things that we do already, that the best educators do these things already. And that's sort of acknowledge that the best learning is problem centered and learners are engaging in solving real world problems. And also, we try to activate existing knowledge and link that to new knowledge, new information, new techniques. Often the learner needs good demonstrations about how to engage in appropriate activities that promote learning, or to be shown a set of skills that they need to be able to learn how to do. That we want them to apply the knowledge that they've acquired, directly. And that we want to integrate a lot of these concepts into the real world. And so I've got a reference on that if you want to read more. But I just thought, as we think about GPT, can we sort of step back to something that's sort of a classic now, over 20 years old, and kind of make that work given a framework that we think does very well for instruction. And then many of you are familiar with social constructivism. that human development is socially situated, and that people often work together to make meaning, create artifacts, as well as new knowledge. And so how can we involve GPT directly or indirectly in some of those processes? We could promote collaborative learning where we have students in groups query GPT to generate prompts, ask questions, share responses, solve problems, think of solutions, and then provide feedback on that experience directly. Can we use it to scaffold learning during problem solving? So, instead of having an experienced other right in the room, can they use GPT to sort of explain things, to simplify concepts? We talk a lot about cognitive load in instructional design. Can they get a simplified explanation? Can we facilitate peer-to-peer learning collaboration in some ways? Can GPT, this is a question, it's not it should not be a statement. It should be a question mark. Can we use it as a human proxy? Maybe not now, but can we do it in the future? These are just thoughts that I had. And
Hey,
then
Chris, I have a comment on that one, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Nadeem had a really good point. He said we can shift to project-based assessments, and he's talking about multiple delivery dates and kind of going around with what Nadeem mentioned. This tool really provides us a unique opportunity to think about assignments and activities that we come up with for students. We can use this tool as a resource for students as they complete assignments. I went into Chat GPT, and out of curiosity, I asked it, what are some ways that students can use you as they complete assignments? So what are some assignment ideas? What are some activity ideas? And interestingly, it gave me over 50 different ways that it can be used for assignments and assessments or activities, which really shows that there's a lot of options and there's a lot of room for creativity with the way that you can incorporate this as a tool for students to complete assignments and activities.
Surely. Brittany, do you have anything on this slide you want to talk about, or these were some ideas that we brainstormed a few days ago relative to how much you develop instruction? What are some of the techniques or approaches that you might utilize?
No, I would just add, I think what Nadeem said is a really great point, in that this could be a really good tool for students to be able to use if they don't have access. If you have 100 students in your class, you're not going to be able to give every single one so much attention to detail, but that is a way to use ChatGPT or other AIs as well.
Thank you. Here's a list of popular tools. They're some of the more salient tools that I found when doing quite a bit of searching. Please, we're almost to the point where you all will start talking, and please feel free to add your own in the conversation, or let me know, and we'll add it to my little list that I've got going on. I want to think also about future jobs. And this gentleman named Barry, in March of 2019, I don't know that he coined the phrase. I heard it from Brian Alexander, who you all should check out. He's a technology futurist and specifically writes on the future of higher education. Everything he does is very well worth your time. But this concept of an AI wrangler, it's somebody who can invoke these various tools, techniques, processes to get these various AI tools to do the things that we want them to do. And this article from Barry, March 2019, it was kind of prescient a little bit. And I think that may be worth your time. And of course, Brian Alexander is always worth your time. Here's the reference list. And now, who wants to speak?
Chris, I'm going to jump in here because, when I started this, I was very, oh no, I don't want to I don't want to deal with this. And now I've talked with Stephen about this, and I want to create an assignment where this is the first step in the assignment. And I want to see what the students come up with and have them respond to it. So Stephen and I have kind of chatted about that in one of my eCampus courses. So I'll report back to you in the fall. How's that?
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. And I think that's the problem that I'm hearing, or the challenge, is that, we got, it's like that. In Richmond, we have this water park for kids, and it's like this big bucket has been filled up, and it just kind of got dumped on us within the span of, just a few short months. And we're going to swim through this. We're going to come up for air. but right now the water is still kind of being poured over us. So thank you for that. Thank you for accepting that challenge. And I really look forward to hearing what you do with it.
We in first year courses, we have all the student success seminars, and students are going to use this. I mean, I use it. It's awesome. It's a really great tool and a lot of things that we have to do. And so we're working with the library to come up with how to teach students to use it appropriately. We're looking at it from an academic integrity aspect. We're working with the student conduct office as well when we're trying to figure out how to do this. So our hope is that even within their first semester seminar, we are also talking to them about it from the very beginning. And then these types of conversations will continue to happen in their other classes.
Thank you, Star. Yeah.
One
great.
possibility to kind of look into, Star, that I would add is look at it also as a study aid, a study tool. In fact, I was reading an article recently about how some of these tutoring services are noticing a rapid decline in the amount of student subscriptions to them. And that's because of people learning about how you can use these for studying as sort of a tutoring service.
Absolutely. Thank you. I kind of like what Chris was talking about in the beginning. Like if you don't know something about something and you're trying to get quick information, like that's what I've kind of been using it for. I needed to know something, and then it generates some ideas, and then I don't necessarily use all of it, but I mean, it gets me in the right headspace and it helps me focus my ideas. And so I think that's a really good way for students to hopefully look at this. And again, we're working with Trina Napier and Ashley Cole in the library to make sure that we can try to do this in the right way.
Thank
And
you.
Yeah,
This is Trina.
Trina, can you help us all?
I mean, we're hoping that the things that we create for first year courses will be scalable and, transferable in some ways. We have a different group working on some faculty support. I wanted to kind of interject, kind of bounce off of what Stephen and Star were saying. EKU provides a lot of tutoring services for its students, and, Student Success Center, Knoll Studio, the libraries, we all offer online services for those students who are at a distance, but we're also all operating in our own time zone, and we aren't operating 24/7. And so for me, ChatGPT in some ways could serve as that brainstorming or outlining service that we provide, with humans to our students, for those students who are, at such a distance that our time zone just absolutely will not work for them, or who are working in ways that they can't take advantage of our services. We have students who are actively military, right? And some of those things are hard for them. So I think there are some interesting ways that it could kind of increase access for students in areas and populations where there are barriers that we have put in place unintentionally for them.
That's great. Anne's got her hand up. Thank you, Trina, for that. That's a great point. We don't think about the panoply of our students a lot of times. We think about one or a couple sections. Sorry, Anne, please.
Hey, thanks, Chris. I appreciate your example earlier today, and good information. I would like to have a copy of that for my classes. Actually, I'm a fan of AI. I think it's awesome, a new tool that we can use, cited appropriately. I do think that one way to work around some of the challenges of AI is to require students to use particular materials, require students to cite the materials. AI doesn't do that. At least ChatGPT doesn't do that. And there's another relative to that service that does provide a paragraph with some citations, but it's limited. So, and then of course you can't use ChatGPT to do an exercise in a class where you actually have to like drag and drop, similar terms or whatever under categories. So I guess for myself, I'll be more creative about the types of activities beyond the snapshot little short answers to discussion questions. I will have to think a little bit more about that, but there's some workarounds at least.
That stuff's coming. In fact, some of the links that I show are going to give you examples like automated video creation with drag and drop. There's a link for that in there. I'll bring that out if you're interested in seeing it after. Matthew Howe. Thank you.
Yeah. So first off, thank you for not just focusing on the plagiarism stuff. I might be whistling past the graveyard, but what I've seen of ChatGPT right now, I'm not really worried about plagiarism. I've compared it to a reasonably good but lazy freshman is about what it produces. I've been dealing with that for 15 years. So I'm really excited at some of these additional possibilities that are out there. I like the stuff on generating it. Kind of to follow up on my earlier question, and Nadeem was talking about this as well in the chat. My kind of continuing worry is not that students are going to use this to cheat. It's that they're going to try to use it as a legitimate tool, but not understand its real limitations. And so that's why I was interested, could I train a GPT thing? And Nadeem says it is possible, just requires a lot of hardware I might not have. Because again, my concern is we're teaching kids how to like whittle, and ChatGPT is a chainsaw. And they're going to be like, oh yes, how much can I do with this giant chainsaw? And it's just going to make a mess. And so that's, the training wheels. I want my students to have training wheels when they deal with the ChatGPT, I guess. That's what I'm really looking forward to.
That's a beautiful point, and sometimes you just need that little carving knife, or sometimes you don't even really need to whittle. You should go to the store and get the wooden dowel or something, That's a great point and great analogy.
Hey, Chris, I had two follow-up comments. First is that Ann mentioned citations, and I've noticed that this is definitely a weakness when it comes to it. If you're a subject matter expert in a specific topic, you're going to be able to know your what needs to be cited and who the experts are and when citations need to take place. And as I've been kind of, I'm a subject matter expert in a very unique topic. It's a very specialized topic, and I know the sources for it. And when I ask for citations in that specific topic, I notice a lot of weaknesses. And so this is where you really get to see how you, as the subject matter expert, the professor, the instructor in a particular field, that human aspect that we've been talking about. And also it's very helpful for identifying anything such as plagiarism or just students borrowing from this tool and submitting it as their own. The other thing that has been mentioned has to do with how students are going to use this. Star mentioned it, and for these new students. And it's kind of interesting to think about how some of our instruction can focus on how we use it, how we interact with it, questions that we present to it, the prompts that we create. Instead of just asking for an answer to a question, we can ask, teach me how this answer is given, elaborate on how you came up with this answer. And so that's, to me, that's kind of the training wheels that I think that we can teach these students is, how do you use this tool, and how do you write prompts? How do you create criteria for it to respond to? And how does it actually teach you something instead of just providing you an answer?
Yeah, great secondary, similar but different point. We need structure for our students. We need to show them how to best leverage it. And Oliver said in chat, GPT tends to make stuff up. Absolutely. It also makes up the wrong stuff. So you could ask it, tell me about the fictitious war between West Virginia and Tennessee, and it may very well give you something very strange. Brittany, you had your hand up.
No, I was just, Kelly Smith in the comments had said that it makes up sources, and that is true. It's called hallucinating when it makes up false information. So that's something to be on the lookout for.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying with the citations, is it actually does that, and it does it very well. It's very convincing. It looks like those are real sources, but the more you look into it, the more you realize it did hallucinate, and those sources do not exist. So students could very easily think that, here is a citation that it's provided me. This must be accurate. But you, as the subject matter expert, you will be able to tell the difference.
Try telling it it's wrong about a particular false assertion or claim and see what it does. It's very interesting. Sometimes it will fight with you, and sometimes it will acquiesce, and that's an interesting dance. Who else would like to speak? And you made a point in chat.
Yes, I made a point in chat. I was horrified. I looked at my research area, which is about relational spirituality in social work practice, and I could have written a whole paper just by all the various queries. And I actually saved all that information. I mean, just by using all the various queries about relational spirituality, how it applies to social work. I mean, it was just like, oh my gosh, I'm like, I'm not needed here in this world. I mean, I felt like I'm like, I mean, really, I'm done. But at the same time, it's like, well, there were no references there. And it didn't really do the thinking that, I mean, it was good though, I have to say. So, I mean, it's kind of intimidating. And so it's really making me think twice about what I'm producing. I mean, is this really a contribution to the literature? I mean, if an AI can produce it, it's like, well, why am I even trying to write something like this and get it published? I mean, just to be frank.
What it's not doing, I think, solving problems. And so we still need the problem solvers to come in and tell us how to apply things. But, I understand the perspective. Thank you.
And I really enjoyed your comment. You said, how deep do we expect students to go in writing papers? What ChatGPT produces might be considered enough. It depends on the concept being addressed. This really shows you the importance as you come up with assignments and to think about how the assignments are created and what they consist of. Nadeem earlier mentioned that maybe we need to go back to, turning in projects or writing papers in stages. And this kind of gets to the point that sometimes it's better to ask for less assignments that have to do with better quality and to produce better quality instead of thinking about the quantity of assignments that are produced in a class.
Thank you. Dan Florell's got his hand up.
When I'm thinking about this, I teach a lot of in-person classes, so I almost like it the way I keep hearing it framed is, like the rough drafts, the ideas on how to get started. I've even plugged in notes that I've taken from 2 or 3 sources and say, please try to integrate these points. But then having an accountability that could even be random, saying, because we just finished in the psych department our research projects, right? And you had a poster presentation, and if ChatGPT created the whole poster, you go up to the student and start asking them, well, what did you learn about this? What is this? And I'm not saying you would have to do that for every single student, but it's like that's the accountability aspect. And just like you can cheat on your taxes, occasionally the IRS might come around and ask you, well, where's your proof? And how much of this is really being understood? Because when you're just cutting and pasting, you're not reading that. And so I think, having some accountability, and then that way they can learn how to, okay, I got to use this, but in the back of my mind, I know Professor Florell is going to call on 5 of us to come up and present exactly what we were learning. And if I didn't read any of this stuff, I'm going to be looking there and passing out from being too anxious because I don't know it. And so I think we can still encourage, because I think a lot of this has an awful lot of possibilities. And I think it's going to be an amazing tool they'll use in their professional lives. But in the end, it takes that human knowledge aspect, right? We can't divorce ourselves. How are we going to ever check in our next generation if we spend our whole careers just cribbing from the computer? So anyway, that's just one of my ideas, more in person than it may be for an e-campus feasible. But even doing it randomly or saying a couple times in the semester, you're going to be called to the front to defend your answers on this assignment or to elaborate on them.
Thank you, Dan. We have a perfect tool for that to some extent. It's called Flipgrid or Flip. We can have, and I'm sure you've used something similar, if not that specific tool. We can say, okay, you need to give me a 3-minute breakdown of this particular project or writing that you just produced. And Eric Liddell had he called forth, like, there's something at Oxford that happens when you write a paper that they used to have students engage in. So, almost like a defense sort of, or at least an explanation of what you did. Thank you for that point. Someone else, please speak. We have centuries of experience here. Let's please share.
Chris, you're on mute.
It would help to unmute, wouldn't it? Dan, is your hand up again?
Yeah, it is. I just, since nobody else was saying anything, I'm really curious. I think a lot of this we've been focusing on teaching and with students, but I'm just really curious what others are thinking about as far as Somebody shared in the chat how well ChatGPT would work on these AP exams, in specific areas, and how they maybe reflect on how that might influence our own kind of professional writing. I'm thinking, if only, is there an AI out there that, like EBSCOhost, has borrowed Chat's technology, but then run the whole swath of their journal articles through their own version of ChatGPT? And maybe Chris, since you've done a lot of this exploration, are there chat? Because one of the big things I've heard about Chat, it's as good as the database it's scanned from. So, all the paywall stuff, the really good stuff in academics, most of that's still behind the paywall. So do you know of efforts on that end? And I can't imagine like EBSCO or whoever else does these, they're not giving that up to OpenAI. So do you know anything about that?
Nothing on the academic front. I only know that, Amazon's looking into things. Google Bard is, of course, coming to fruition, and Bing has co-opted a good portion of OpenAI's technology, their underpinning technology, to change how, they're always trying to push that browser. So whatever they can get the Microsoft browser to do that differentiates itself is there. And I imagine that's going to quickly filtrate into academic search databases, but I don't have any direct information of that. Does anybody else have any experience on that? Jessica, your hand's up. Somebody chat and we'll get back to that.
I just had a comment. I'm coming at it from a non-educator perspective. I was a teacher for many, many years, but now I work as a computer programmer analyst here at EKU. And this is a new field for me, so I'm totally confused on everything. And I have been using ChatGPT for about the last week and a half for all of the computer coding that I'm trying to figure out. Like you guys said, it's not perfect, but it definitely is a way or a place besides my colleagues who don't always have the time to explain all of this stuff to me because they've all got their own work to do. But it's definitely a way for me to have kind of a tutor to help me with this stuff. And I was just thinking from an educator perspective, you give essays to your students all the time to read that are hard for them to understand. This may be a way, this could actually be an extra assignment for them to take the essay and go to ChatGPT and it try to help them to understand it. And that goes with all sorts of difficult topics, I believe. So that was just my 2 cents worth from a non-educator perspective.
Thank you. And yeah, anytime we can try to simplify things, I worry about the accuracy at this point, but simplification can really help get us over certain intellectual humps and through problems. Kelly had her hand up.
Just to respond to Dan's question, I don't know that EBSCO's planning to build AI into their search platform anytime soon, but all the citations are not behind paywalls. Like you can find citations in Google Scholar, and that's the one thing that ChatGPT can not do correctly. Like it really can't. It just makes up things. So until, they can get that worked out, I don't see that happening.
Thank you. Jessica, do you have something to add, or you just okay? Yeah, we're still very much in uncharted territory with so much of this stuff, and I really wish we could kind of fast forward and know where these things are going to settle, so that we could make more strategic decisions and think about how it affects instruction. And
hi, once more, I just actually made a comment in a chat box, and I just realized that, oh my gosh, it's kind of like, am I being sarcastic? I was basically saying, I was saying that AI will not replace teachers, and that it's not going to happen. But in a way, it kind of is. It's kind of like streamlining some of the teaching responsibilities. So maybe it's easier to handle more students. But I think ultimately, students will always need teachers. We always need to have a dedicated person that is able to fine tune and address the human need, the human side of teaching. So I think it definitely makes it easier, but because we were talking about fields going extinct in the chat room, chat box over there.
Thank you. What do we think about that? Do we think whole fields are going to go extinct? I don't know. I'm not sure about that yet. I want to see where things go in the next year.
It's a really interesting topic, but if you go to ChatGPT and you even ask it about that topic, it will admit that it doesn't understand the psychology of human learning. And so that is pretty interesting that it has that admission.
I mean, you hear people talk about winners and losers anytime there's innovation. I hate really thinking about it in those terms, but we do see shifts. I mean, we know of jobs that didn't exist prior to the internet boom that now exist, and those have come and gone. Just with hardware and software technologies have come and gone. So that's something I'm always thinking about. And I think about this AI wrangler. Like, I want to put on a cowboy hat and a lasso and fancy myself as somebody who can do all that stuff. What do you think about that?
I just wanted to point out really quickly too that it is very overwhelming, some of the stuff that's coming down the pipeline, and there's going to be so much that we are continuing to learn, and it sometimes feels like you can go down a rabbit hole of what is the future going to look like. So I would just say, be very kind to yourself as you're learning about all of this new stuff that's coming out, especially this summer. I think we're going to see so much, and take your time with it, process it before you just continue to learn and learn, because it can be overwhelming. But my hope is that AI will really make it so that we can take away some of the additional parts of our job description that maybe we could automate a little bit, so that I think your last point about teachers will never be replaced, right? Faculty should never be replaced, because students, they can't be seen by an AI. They can only be seen by a faculty member, and that's really powerful.
So, Chris, another question. Is most of this all being generated with the free AI, or are you using the paid version, and differences and university access and that? Because I know there's different levels of different.
Sure. Everything I showed you today was just with Chat GPT. Remember, if you look at some of those lists, like that one, I forget which slide, I show you 33 AI writing tools, of which Chat GPT from OpenAI is one. That's the free version. I think Nadim Slepčević has GPT-4. I just haven't got my credit card out. I'm going to mess around with it when I have free time, whatever that is. But yeah, I mean, it's just one. And I think, I wonder if universities will focalize around a particular service or set of services for providing some of these needs, but as soon as we avow that, people are actually using it in higher education. It's a great question.
Because I've also seen ChatGPT being able to create the avatars and the avatar talking through the lesson and stuff.
Yeah. Now there are different image generative tools. For example, DALL-E 2, DALL-E-2 can do some of that, but it produces weird, like if you ask it for a human face, I mean, it makes some bizarre human faces. But Nadim uses one that you have to use along with Discord, which is a chat application. It makes some really great stuff, and I haven't even delved into that. I don't know, Nadim, if you want to speak on that, if you're still around, but there are several of even those. And then with those we get into copyright, intellectual property. There are individuals who have particular artistic style. I think I heard on NPR not too long ago, they're suing because they're using my style that is mine and mine alone. So anyway, sorry.
And then I guess my other follow-up is, so far, have any of the LMSs said that they're going to integrate access to any of these tools that you're aware of? I'm just curious. I'm sure it'll come.
Now, somebody was telling me, I can't recall it, so I have to say I don't remember, but it seems like somebody was trying that. Dr. Kim, would you like to speak?
Yeah, hi. I also I'm actually have more like a concerns rather than using the positive side of ChatGPT, because I was thinking about the role of academia in higher education. So when in terms of a new knowledge, well, we could consider both consumption of knowledge as well as creation of knowledge. In higher education, like we probably leaning toward like a creation of knowledge portion. Well, to create new knowledge, but definitely we have to consume. So that means ChatGPT could be good source to learn new things or to consume knowledge. But when I was assigning an essay question, I also typed in the same question in GPT, and I found that the ChatGPT has created beautiful answer on the question. But one of the portion of the essay question is, okay, provide a certain example and explain and evaluate how it works in this area. Well, for instance, but even ChatGPT was able to provide a suggestion. And then this is the chat, this is like more toward the creation of a knowledge portion. However, by using ChatGPT, it can remove the opportunity for students to think about a different question and then let them think about more other options or opportunities based on the knowledge they absorbed through ChatGPT or other sources. But I was not confident to say, yes, ChatGPT was able to help them to create like or evaluate existing knowledge. And also, my second concern is I am not sure if the source is credible. So, for instance, I want to learn how to cook a turkey for Thanksgiving. Well, it's okay if I use like 13 pounds or 16 pounds of turkey, but it is okay. However, if it is related to specific matters in academia, well, the credibility of sources becomes really important. And well, like Stephen mentioned, and many of us discussed, it doesn't provide any citation for the source of information. Then, even though it sounds okay, most of the cases, they are some generic information on a certain matter. And sometimes we cannot trust the information source. So, well, we will see this ChatGPT will have lots of progress and more development, and definitely academia will prepare and will counter all those issues. But as of now, I'm very concerned and I'm very hesitant to assign the same essay question. They would be able to find what, particularly if it is a gen courses, it does not require very sophisticated theory for them to apply and learn those things. Then what's the purpose of teaching in classroom? So I have been thinking about this, but every time I use ChatGPT and find some examples, well, I feel I'm getting more concerned. Well,
I can speak to that. I think Dr. Kim has a great point. I think a lot of us kind of share some of those concerns. And, you know, this is kind of where I was going with my previous comment. And I'm sorry if I didn't articulate it, my response very well, but this is where I think rewriting the assignment and taking into consideration tools like this comes into play. You know, you can have a student, for example, write an essay according to a prompt, but a secondary part of that prompt could be then use ChatGPT to provide criticism for the essay. And then part 3 could be now reflect on the criticism ChatGPT provided you for your essay. And so there's ways to incorporate it. So ChatGPT actually becomes something that's useful and I think less of a concern. And it's a way to look at this tool as something that could be, you know, we can train students to think differently about it instead of I'm coming here just to get my answer. It's a resource to help you fine tune your answer.
Yeah, and when I assign my essays or other assignments, I ask my students not to use Wikipedia as academic source. And then if I say, okay, use a ChatGPT to evaluate this and find some weaknesses, then well, another way we could mean like use Wikipedia, find more information or things like that. So it goes back to my concern if ChatGPT can serve as credible source, or even it can provide specific citations for the information that they provide? Or can it be reviewed by experts in the area? So I'm Department of Government. So if there are groups of people who can review the information that ChatGPT provided, and there is like a watermark, this information is reviewed by this group of people, then I would say my students would consume the legit information about specific topic and use ChatGPT as a credible source for them to further their knowledge. But without such guarantee, I'm hesitant.
Thank you both. Oliver, you had your hand up a minute ago. Did you want to make another point?
Yeah, just a quick one, just based on what Stephen was saying. I know that high schools in Lexington and Georgetown are setting assignments for high school kids to get the GPT to generate an essay, and then they have to analyze it and then resubmit their version of what that essay is. And I think that's great because it's teaching them the structure of an essay, but then they have to rewrite all the nuances and all the details into that essay. So it seems that they're trying to go the way that I think the GPT should be used, instead of just giving it a prompt and copying it and pasting it into your assignment.
We all know there's a lazy, I mean, we can, if we're trying to use it like a calculator, that's going to be very fraught. And also we want to scaffold that into, I think, a student's approach to solving problems or creating new knowledge. Anyone have final thoughts? I'm glad to stay on, but we're at the hour. Does anyone want to make another point before we wrap this the formal aspect of it up? I so appreciate your interest and enthusiasm in this topic. I hope these sessions are serving you, at least in some small way. My point, or when I go to one of these, if I take a couple things away that were interesting, it's always worth my time. So I hope it was worth your time today. Thank you. Continue thinking and doing the excellent job of providing instruction for our students and supporting the people that do that. We really appreciate the partnership and the engagement here. I'll end the recording, but otherwise, thank you all so much for attending, and I look forward to the next time. Thank you so much.